How's it going, everyone? Welcome into NOLA Preps Friday Night Live. Spencer Urquhart bringing you all a Week 8 edition of NOLA Preps Friday Night Live with Joe Halm and Chris Dabe. We just got back from our games out in the field, covering New Orleans area high school football and North Shore, all of the games throughout the New Orleans metro area. So let's start off with Chris, who was at the John Curtis Jesuit game, which saw John Curtis extend their undefeated season. It's been quite the year for Curtis. A pretty commanding win there over Jesuit, 37-10. Tell us about what happened out there.
Yeah, Curtis beat Jesuit 37-10, and the thing that really stood out was what they did throwing the ball. London Padgett, the sophomore quarterback, he was 9 of 12 passing, 282 yards, and you don't see that too often for a passing total for a quarterback from Curtis. And of course, it comes with the opportunity. The opportunity comes based on how the defense is playing. If they're playing up to stop the run, and you get a receiver out behind the defense, usually he's pretty wide open, and that was the case tonight. Paul Dufresne had a 58-yard touchdown. Derek Horton an 87-yard touchdown, and that's the one that made it 24-3 in the third quarter. And then Horton had another long pass reception later on to set up another score. So Curtis ran the ball for only 139 yards, and they threw it for 282, and that's not too common for that school. And I asked JT Curtis about it after the game. First thing I asked him, and he's just like, "Oh, we can throw the ball. It's not what we do all the time, but when the defense is playing up like they were, we're going to take those chances." And I think it shows a lot of trust that they have in that sophomore quarterback, London Padgett. I covered their game last week as well, and he was 8 of 11 passing in that game. So he doesn't throw it a whole lot, but he gets a lot of gains out of when he does. And it seems like he's doing a real nice job of kind of running the offense in the way that Curtis likes to have things done, with that split back veer, run-based option offense that certainly they can throw when the chance is there.
For sure. And see, we got a comment here from Dre Donovan Smith, who is, I'm guessing, an Edna Carr fan there. Curtis Jesuit was one of our games of the week. Carr Easton, though, definitely a huge one, a big rivalry game. But Carr, they're just so dominant. They just didn't know what to expect. I mean, they got a 63-12 dub. I mean, they just seem to be just a step ahead of most teams. So.
Yeah, and that leads us to kind of the next thing for Curtis, is they're going to be playing Carr next week. And so certainly talking about the Curtis Jesuit game does not mean that anybody holds Curtis in higher regard than the reigning state champion Carr Cougars with their 21 game winning streak that they got going. Is that right? Yeah, 8 wins this year, 13 last year. And that's gonna be the game that decides the district title. I think before the season began, you could probably point to that game as one. Any year that since Carr's been in 9-5A, you can look at that game as being kind of the one that most years will decide the district title. So yeah, Carr's putting up a lot of points, 63 points tonight, second year in a row. They've done that against Warren Easton, and to be honest, I kind of expected that to be sort of the outcome. I don't know if I would have predicted another 60-point showing for Carr, but it's not surprising considering they did it last year. So, we talk about Curtis and what their quarterback can do and what they typically can do with the run game, but how that matches up against a defense that's fronted by LSU commitment Richard Anderson, who can get into any backfield, it seems, just anytime he wants and blow up some plays. That's going to be the thing that Curtis is going to have to overcome.
For sure. Yeah, and we'll see if Carr can keep their undefeated streak going. Got Curtis and then Rummel, who got a 24-3 win tonight over Holy Cross. Rummel having another solid year there. They lost a lot from last year. I believe they were the district runner-ups last year, but still a pretty solid force there in 9-5A.
Yeah, I happened to see them play last Saturday night against St. Aug, and St. Aug won that game, but Rummel made St. Aug work for all the points they got, at least on the defensive end. They did give St. Aug some short fields with some turnovers and a muffed punt. So it's not surprising to see Rummel hold down a team to 3 points like they did tonight against Holy Cross. They're 3-2 in district now, and their 2 district losses have come against pretty good teams, being Curtis and St. Aug.
For sure. Yep. Yeah, St. Aug playing tomorrow against Brother Martin to round out the Catholic League slate. So, non-Catholic League game that had a lot of hype surrounding it tonight was St. Charles Belle Chase, which is where I was at in Laplace at St. Charles. It was their homecoming night. Very packed house, an exciting atmosphere out there. And St. Charles able to come away with a 19-7 win. Comet set the tone there. They had one of those just long clock draining drives that Wayne Stein's known for. They got the ball, I believe, with Belle Chase had the ball first and chewed some clock, but were unable to score. And then when St. Charles got it, they just ran the clock down to where it was into the second quarter, and it was still their first drive. And then Skylar Edwards, their workhorse running back, punched it in from a yard out. But the thing that really stood out to me for St. Charles was the LeBlanc to LeBlanc connection. Landry LeBlanc, junior quarterback, to his cousin, senior Walker LeBlanc. Those two were just dialed in tonight. Landry completed 11 of 11 passes in the first half, finished 14 of 16 for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. 7 of those completions went to Walker LeBlanc, who had 98 yards and a touchdown, a 40-yard score for him to put St. Charles up 12-0. 2 missed PATs there, kind of uncharacteristic for them. And then Belle Chase got the ball in the second half and had a drive there to end it with an Amari Ambrose touchdown. Looked like they might be coming back, but then St. Charles' defense, which has been strong all year, came up with a big stop when Belle Chase had a chance to score again, got the ball back, and saw the tight end Gabe Kugler catch a 16-yard touchdown from Landry LeBlanc to seal the win there. So decent game, but it's clear that St. Charles is pretty strong on both sides of the ball there and was able to handle a Belle Chase team that had outscored their opponents by some absurd amount, I believe by like 300 points, and was averaging over 50 points a game through 7 weeks.
Yeah, their point average was far higher than the total number of points they've allowed all year. I think they came in averaging 50 points scored and allowed only, 25, 30 points for the whole season.
Right.
But you talk about Landry LeBlanc, and it sounds like that's another traditional kind of run-based, a team that likes to run the ball more than anything, but can excel with some efficient passing, like what Landry LeBlanc showed, and kind of sticking with the theme with London Padgett from Curtis as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been noticing that a lot of teams shift to these quick hitting passing games, and they seem to be pretty effective. Carr doing that too with John Johnson when I covered him against Brother Martin. There's a lot of quick hitting short passes that seem to be pretty effective there. So let's shift gears to were you about to say something, Chris?
Yeah, then too with St. Charles, that puts them in position for when they play Shaw in Week 10.
Right.
You're looking at a likely district title game, and a game that's have some implications on those power ratings. Is both of them play in Division II Select. Both of them are pretty high up there. Last time I looked, I'm pretty sure they're both in the top 5. So you might be looking at the difference between being at home, having a home game for the semifinal, or having to travel, or if they're playing each other again, that deep in the playoffs. The winner of that game when they play in Week 10 might get to host when they play each other, to look kind of down the road that way.
For sure. Yeah, Shaw St. Charles meet Week 10, covered that game last year. Shaw handled them fairly easily, but I'll expect this year to be a closer matchup. So let's shift gears to the North Shore here on NOLA Press Friday Night Live. Joe, tell us about where you were at tonight. I believe you was at St. Paul's North Shore.
Yeah, St. Paul's North Shore. It went pretty much how we expected it to go. St. Paul's got a comfortable win, 38-14, but they scored the first 2 offensive plays. Brendan Vila had a 60-yard TD catch, and then defense gets a stop, and Cody Corrales touched the ball for the first time, and he runs 92 yards down the sideline shows off his 4.4 speed, and just like that, it's 14-0. But credit to North Shore, they battled, kept it 17-0 at half, sort of recovered, came out in the second half and scored. Ramon Williams went over 1,000 yards. He had 150 yards rushing. He was really the bell cow for North Shore. He has been. But then St. Paul's showed a little bit of their growth this year. We talked about tough schedules. They played for the Martin. They played University, and in those games they both struggled in the second half. This second half they come out and they answer that, score 3 straight times. Cody Corrales, the running back, even had a touchdown sort of shovel forward pitch, a pass to Troy Willis out of the Wildcat. That was really the death knell. That was on the first play of the fourth quarter, and St. Paul's looks like St. Paul's. They look like they're rounding into form. I sort of think through the first, Coach Kenny Sears mentioned this, that through those first 5 games, they didn't put together 48 minutes of football, not even once, even in their wins. They felt like they had left some stuff out there. And tonight was a night where it looked like, there was a lull in the second quarter for them, and I think that had a lot to do with North Shore. But then when they got punched in the mouth and started second half, they came out and scored 3 times in a row and made sure that there was no hope on homecoming for North Shore in that second half. And that's a good sign for St. Paul's. They've got a couple of big matchups coming up at home, and they want to start sort of building that momentum. They always talk about how they divide their season up, and now they're in that swing to the postseason. So it was a good game for that. And then Brady Pearson, their quarterback, if we're going to stick with the quarterback theme, he had a nice night. He was 9 of 16, threw for 205 yards, was efficient, and looked good for a junior. Looks like he's getting more and more comfortable. Second week in a row that he's gone over 200 yards passing, which in an offense that has Cody Corrales and Troy Willis, that's a lot. I mean, because those are 2 mouths that you want to feed at the running back position. So it was a good night for St. Paul's, and I think for North Shore, Coach Bobby Sanders. I love Coach Sanders. He's a character. After the game, he always is way down if he thinks they played poorly. And this was a game where they got beat by several scores, and he goes, "No, this was fine. They're a better program than us, but we fought. We didn't give up. We scored there at the end." I think he sees that his program's in a better spot in week 8 than they were in week 1, which is really all you can ask for at this point in the season.
For sure. I see Salmon was able to come away with the district win there over Slidell. Big win for them. And then Covington able to take down Hammond. Hammond's kind of having a bounce back year this year. So what other games stood out to you on the North Shore, Joe?
Yeah, I think that Covington one was pretty huge for them. They've struggled offensively at times. They found a way to take care of Hammond, and most importantly, they held them, to just 2 scores, which was big. And then obviously Lakeshore was big over LaRondre. They lost that game last year. Now they're in a position with 1 week to play. If they win next week at Hannon, they're going to be the district champion. I know that was one of their preseason goals last year, especially after losing 2 district games last year. So they're in a good spot, even with the injuries. They feel like they can go to Hannon and take care of business, and then they would have a match against Hanville in week 10, which could be a huge PowerPoint game, like Chris mentioned earlier. I mean, I think some of the most intriguing stuff about week 9 and 10 is almost not the district title, because it means something, but it doesn't mean as much as getting the 1 or 2 seed if you're one of those seeds competing for that in the playoffs. Because looking down the road, and we're paid to do that, right? We're paid to sort of look ahead. That semifinal game at home is huge. It's just absolutely huge. We saw it last year, the quarterfinal game at home for Franklinton with Lakeshore. That was the reason Franklinton won that game. It was a 1-score game, or it was a 1-point game. And I think if Lakeshore plays that in the Coliseum, they win that game. And they're probably playing in the Dome. So that sort of seeding stuff is really interesting as we get closer to the end of the regular season.
For sure. Yeah, only 2 weeks left here. We're in week 8. Just have 2 more to go. NOLA Preps Friday Night Live, week 8. If you're tuned in, we appreciate y'all watching. And yeah, we've got a few more games to recap here, and we'll look ahead. So, Chris, what other games stood out to you? I see South Plaque was able to take down Country Day. That was an intriguing matchup. 32-23 win for South Plaquemine. And McDonough 35 looked like may have been challenged a little bit there from Carver. 35 though comes away with a big district win there. 42-26.
Yeah, South Blackman was one of the ones that kind of stood out to me, just considering all the points Country Day has been putting up over the last 5 weeks since their quarterback, Hudson Wright, returned from his injury, and scoring 49, 56, 60, whatever points, um, just about every time out. So it's not entirely surprising to see South Platte give them a challenge and even win the game. They are a reigning state champion. I know they lost a lot of players on offense from last year, but they do have some young players that have filled in, and really a fifth-year starting quarterback, which you don't hear about too often on the high school level. Has been Roderick Parker's been starting since he was in eighth grade. So, and South Platte is up there in the power ratings as well. I mean, they might be getting primed to make another kind of deep playoff run, if not getting all the way to the dome. There's certainly a team that's worth checking out in the next couple of weeks, and they'll be playing Newman in 2 weeks. Which that one looks like they play a different playoff bracket, so that one's just for district pride. Country Day and Newman play Thursday. So first, that'll be the first one that they're looking at. But that South Plaquemine Newman game will be kind of interesting. Another one that kind of stood out was St. Martin's beating West St. John 23-20, and St. Martin's got so much attention for 4 years before this one with Harlem Berry there, and so it's nice to see them get what I think is a pretty big district win coming into the year. I thought West St. John was going to be kind of the team that would potentially maybe give Riverside a little bit of a challenge, and you covered that one last week, Spencer, and you saw that Riverside's still the class of that district. So if we're talking about other teams in 10-1A, it's good for St. Martin's to see them get that win. De La Salle and Kennedy both got wins. That sets them up probably for the district title next week, Saturday night at Pan Am. And Riverdale got a win. Bonneville plays tomorrow, and I'm kind of looking ahead to that one, week 10. I mean, they're probably both going to be undefeated in district in 10-5A. And then Honville and Destrehan both won, and we can't forget that one, that they're playing next week. Always certainly one of the bigger rivalry games in the state, if not the country. And Destrehan undefeated in the district, and Honville has one loss in district play. So the results of that one will certainly. Terrebonne is kind of the other team that would be hanging in there to hoping to get a three-way tie in the district. But I kind of like Destrehan to win that one, but we'll see.
For sure. Yeah, good bit to look forward to next week. Young Audience is another one that got stood out to me from this week. 28-24 win over Haynes. I know you were at that one last night, Chris. Caleb Jackson, the running back, he said looked pretty good for Young Audiences, right?
Yeah, he's a nice looking running back. I understand he got a 2-lane offer after last year, after his sophomore year. He ran for 105 yards last night, and he's a kid who he doesn't seem to go down on the first contact. He can stiff arm you pretty good. A couple of defenders bounced off him, and takes more than one to get him down. But yeah, they beat Haynes last week, and Young Audiences are undefeated in Class 3A. Now they're not eligible for the playoffs right now, but so that they're kind of an potentially ascending program, but they'll be in 4A next year, so they'll be facing a kind of different different list of teams than what they're playing this year.
For sure. Yeah, that'll be something we'll be finding out here in the coming weeks. The redistricting for 2026. That'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. And so, yeah, we got some good ones next week on tap for sure. Of course, Carr and Curtis for the District 958 title should be really good. Rest of the Catholic League slate. Brummel going against Jesuit on Friday. Brother Martin has Warren Easton. And then St. Aug, who plays Brother Martin tomorrow, has another Saturday game against Holy Cross. Seems like St. Aug is always playing on Saturday there. So, and then Shaw and Bell Chase on Thursday, along with Country Day Newman, should both be really good games in the New Orleans City, West Bank area there. So, yeah, good slate on tap for next week. And so, Joe, close it out. Tell us about what you're looking forward to on the North Shore.
Yeah, I mean, the game of the week is Mandeville at St. Paul's. It's a good rivalry. Mandeville's coming off a nice win over Ponchatoula, 27-0. Sort of a get-right win for them. And like I mentioned, St. Paul's is playing good football. I would think it's going to be a close one. It always seems to come down to a score. So that'll be interesting. St. Paul's is looking for a third straight state title or a district title. So that's step 3 in that quest for them. And then, Lakeshore and Hannon, that's going to be a big game for Lakeshore. They want that district title. And then we got a little Thursday night game, Pope versus Pearl River. A couple of teams that, it's a 2A school going up to hit a 4A school. That'll be on a Thursday night. That's always a good, fun match in the area. And I think it'll be another interesting game. I think you'll probably see some interesting rushing stat lines from that one. So, but I mean, Mandeville St. Paul's is a cream of the crop on the North Shore next week.
For sure. Sounds good. We'll have all that for y'all next week, week 9. It's really getting here into the final stretch. So we're almost to the playoffs, just a couple weeks away. Brackets will be out. Excited to see who's going to go to the Dome this year. So we'll hopefully have a few New Orleans area teams get there, but we still got some time before we get to that. So we'll wrap this one up. For Joe Halm and Chris Dabe, it's been Spencer Urquhart on the NOLA Preps Friday Night Live post-game show. We'll see y'all next week.